and welcome to the second panel of the day. Today we will have three panelists, Rumyana, Dave, and I'm so sorry, Ellie. Ellie, and we're going to have them introduce themselves briefly. So Rumyana, if you want to kick off, please.
Sure, thank you for being here today. I'm working as head of search for Secret Escapes. I've been with the company for 2 years, and I'm leading best-in-class PPC SEO specialist team. So I'm pretty proud of that. And yeah, any insights will be coming up.
I'm Dave. I've been at Click Consults for about 7 years now. I'm head of PPC there. So this is my fantastic team in the audience today. But yeah, we cover everything from paid media, display search, programmatic, shopping, etc.
Hi everyone, my name's Ellie. I head up Microsoft Search Advertising across the North. When I say the North, that's ultimately the agencies and direct clients across the North East and North West, and ultimately anyone above the M25. That's kind of the way things are going. Also, my wonderful team have just walked in as well, so I hope to have some support today.
Okay, you guys can fine. Okay, so then to kick off, the topic today is around perfecting your PPC in 2019. You can ask questions throughout. I have a list of questions that I'll be going through with the panelists, but if you want elaboration or if you want something more, if you have a question for someone specifically, please raise your hand or even just shout it out and we'll have time for that. So to get things going, warmed up a little bit, let's start with Rumyana. So an easy one to start, maybe an easy one, who knows. How can I improve my ads position?
Yeah, that's an easy one. So there are lots of levers that you can pull. I'll start with extensions. So obviously that gives you better CTR. So making sure that you have all available extensions enabled. There's so many now in the new AdWords interface. Promotion extensions, the site links, location extensions perhaps, phone call extension, the list goes on. Just make sure you have all of them enabled. And I think one we've seen to work really well for us is the price extension, which is quite a new feature. So you can actually link to product categories and have like your starting price or discount prices. So that gives you already kind of a competitive advantage, making sure that you can enhance your CTR. I would say efficient bidding, because you might not want to be on the highest average position if that doesn't bring you good quality traffic or it's too expensive. So making sure you have your bidding set up in an automated way, so you're winning only the auctions and kind of getting the average position that you really want to be achieving. Unless perhaps that's a question for your branded campaigns and you want to be top 1 position, then you can set up bidding strategies again to outrank your competitors if they're tapping into your auctions. So there are quite a lot of bidding decisions to be taken that can determine your average position as well. Furthermore, ad copy, the relevancy is key, so making sure you are tailoring your ads. One strategy that my team has been implementing is really having the keyword query kind of being tailored into the headlines. So matching that as much as possible brings you better kind of CTR. And last but not least, the landing page itself also plays a role. So if you have a good user experience, if people are not bouncing off your landing page, that's quite key as well. So I would say the landing page experience needs to be good, as relevant as possible, keeping people engaged on your landing page, so Google is not seeing kind of a bounce rate or anything like that. So I would say these are the 3 key pillars, the ad copy, extensions, and then the landing page.
Great answer. All right. So there you go, extensions, ad copy, landing pages, making sure that you're using all the tools that are available to you. So if we move on to Dave now. Dave, what are the best ways to add personalization to PPC ads?
So some of the best ways to add personalization is through ad customizers. So ad customizers are basically something that enables you to look at signals that can be picked up from the user and use that to personalize the ad copy. So for example, it can be based on the time of the day of the week, the location. Some of the most basic ones are if you're an e-commerce client, then it's all going to be based around delivery, and as we saw in some of the talks earlier, it's more local, this is key kind of people, it resonates more with people. So even if you're a company which can deliver UK-wide, nationwide, then by having the location ad customizer in there, it will actually dynamically say instead, delivery available to Manchester, Liverpool, London, and it'll be the same ad copy dependent on where that person's actually located. It's a very underutilized. Sounds awful. Is someone going to go help?
Keep talking about ad copies.
That'll be fine. That person didn't do that.
So also, you can have it with time of the day as well. So it can be based on, again, if you're able to deliver, it can be, you're not going to be able to offer next day delivery right up till 12 o'clock, ultimately midnight. So you'll have a cut-off point. Now, if that's say 5 o'clock, then you can have ad copy which says, by now for next day delivery up until 5 o'clock. After that time, the ad copy will change to something more generic. It can also be based on if people have previously been to the site as well, so audience-based customizers. And again, it doesn't just have to be a fun way of doing it. I mean, it's all about adding creativity to get your personalization. So, for example, if you were a solicitor's firm, for example, it could be based on if someone's searching very late at night. You can have ad copy based on that time of day, say up at night, worried about whatever they've actually searched for in Google. That's not a fun kind of thing, but still it's something that is going to jump out and increase click-through rates. I mean, the main thing is adding personalization does work. It has a massive effect on click-through rates, so it's something that everyone should be doing. The main way to do this is through ad customizers.
Thank you, Jake. Okay, so we've been seeing how users in the consumer journey has been changing. So now for Ellie, which commonly used metrics should businesses be tracking in 2019? What do you think?
In Microsoft, you often hear folks say, that's a great question, because it gives people time to actually think. So that was a great question. But look, I mean, just important point of diplomatic clarification. I think I'm going to task the other panelists. When we talk about interfaces, we're going to talk about the Bing Ads interface as well as the AdWords interface, if that's fair. And then also we're going to try and talk about Bing as well as Google. Guys, I'm going to task you irrespective of having a chair, obviously, with our good friends at Google. But look, I guess for me, I think it's really important not to be distracted too much by secondary metrics, right? And ultimately, it's all about kind of what works for you as an advertiser and kind of what signals to go off, whether that be CPA, conversion rate, revenue, sales, profit, even, et cetera, et cetera. I guess if you really pushed me on this, there'd be a couple I'd mention. So time on site, so search engines can ultimately drive qualified traffic to your site, but ultimately it's very important to test different pages within that site to ultimately understand where folks are abandoning their conversion journey and ultimately the actions that you can take. Arguably, I'd also say when it comes to a very mobile first world, particularly for the mobile experience, page load time is super important as well, because as we know, customers' expectations are a lot higher these days. We expect instant answers and that instant gratification, so we often lose people if the actual UX experience is poor and too slow.
Thank you, Ellie. Okay, so to change things up a little bit, I won't direct this question at any one of you, but you can all add in, or if you have an opinion about it. So we were looking at attribution earlier, and these are one of those buzzwords about how things are changing. Do we, or do you think that last click is truly a thing of the past, and why?
First, there's no right or wrong answer. Obviously, there are all the different attribution models available to us to compare data points. But in our business, we've really evolved our thinking, and we started using data-driven attribution. And the reason is, as I said, there is no right or wrong answer, and your strategy, marketing investment will change over time. So if you just go with linear or kind of whatever it might be, a custom attribution model, again, it might need rethinking in 6 months, in a year's time. Whereas data-driven really gives you the opportunity to learn as you evolve as a business and to use all of your data points, whether it's in Google Analytics or AdWords itself. But I would say start looking at data-driven attribution results. We use it as a measurement, comparing always with what last click brings to us, especially on remarketing campaigns. But I might be extrapolating what revenue you're getting for your remarketing campaigns. So I think we're getting closer to the data-driven view to be really kind of telling us what performs best. So yeah.
Thank you, Rumyana.
I think last click's not dead yet, but that's only because so few advertisers have moved away from it. It's my opinion that we should all be moving towards data-driven ultimately. Now, data-driven in its current form, I wouldn't say is 100% there yet, though, as I mentioned in your talk earlier. It's something that is going to evolve with time. But the main kind of point is that last click is just very, very flawed for except for very, very few advertisers who are just on a almost just one kind of interaction basis. And if that's the case, then it doesn't matter what attribution model you use if you've only had one interaction. You always need to look to ways to attribute something across each and every one. Then that's where the linear models kind of was initially born out of. But obviously that's massively flawed as well. It needs to look at exactly how to attribute across each and every different point individually. And data-driven is the closest approximation to that as it stands. But the main thing is it's not completely there yet, from my opinion at least. But if we keep down that line of hoping for something like data-driven attribution and overlaying your own custom rules I mentioned earlier, then that's the best kind of strategy.
Nothing else to add.
Nothing to add. Are there any questions right now? Yes, please.
How would you look at incorporating account-based marketing into paid search? It's something I'd be really interested to start doing, but I can't think of a way to approach it. Given that we work with key accounts rather than to lots of different people, so it's a small number of companies we definitely want to approach, but there's another way of getting in there, educating people through paid search.
I guess, can you just repeat the question? I'm not totally sure I
so,
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so instead of wanting to look at everybody that searches a certain keyword, more looking at an account, a particular industry, even down to a particular company set, is there any way that you, to approach that, looking at an account rather than search term, yes, but also looking at the industry in particular?
So looking at how the vertical works for attribution rather than just individual terms in there, do you mean, sorry?
Yes, not really attribution related, sorry if that was supposed to be a question about attribution.
So is what you're saying, any strategies or recommendations around building campaigns not around the actual product but verticalized by industry?
Yeah.
Would that be more what you're looking for?
Yeah, network systems is what we do, as interesting as that is. And I'm just looking at trying to pay for search terms that are by particular types of companies, and that's what I'm struggling with. I tend to get a lot of traffic from companies that never really would be relevant in the first place.
So it's only B2B?
Yeah.
You looked at IP targeting, because there's some companies that do that. Businesses.
Yeah, so we at the moment we do use IP targeting after they come onto our website, so we can get the IP addresses of key accounts. But I've not really worked that into any kind of campaign to actually do anything with that information.
Yeah, I have had people target key stakeholders with social media before, so targeting roles within a certain company.
Yeah,
Maybe your decision makers are being targeted.
Yeah, I mean LinkedIn's a good way of targeting that, really, to be fair. I mean that gives you the most advanced targeting in terms of roles of people in a company. That's how you want to go about it. So rather than targeting by keywords, you are targeting by specific companies or specific seniority.
Yeah, so I was wanting to incorporate more of grading the position of the company on LinkedIn, which is what we're doing, but more on the timing of that and being able to time that with when people take out search activity. But it sounds like something that's quite difficult to do.
I mean there's always strategies around it. I mean, if you are looking at LinkedIn, you're looking at how to kind of break into AdWords. I mean, one thing you could potentially look to do would be to have a look at who's actually gone through on LinkedIn and then create audience lists based on that. So anyone who's gone through that kind of channel, and then look to remarket back to those or use them in search remarketing on AdWords, and then that way you kind of integrate in almost the targeting of LinkedIn with AdWords. It's perhaps not exactly how to describe it, that way, but that's if you use LinkedIn to kind of then as the top of funnel part of it, where you work, and then that then feeds into AdWords. You can have that kind of that link between those. That's probably the best way of going about it, because it's on AdWords it's generally search or audience based rather than company, etc. So you've got to then rely on audience to piggyback off LinkedIn. So it could work potentially that way. That's how I try and tackle it.
I think we have one more question in the back.
I was just going to say, like, with customer match feel like you could start to bring other people's emails.
Yeah, absolutely. If they've been acquired, yeah.
Yeah, so like download it from LinkedIn as well, so you can download all your contacts, email addresses from LinkedIn, and then put them in a customer match list and start with them. All right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's much better to share the audiences between them instead of trying to start something new.
Exactly, yeah.
Thanks.
Right. Are there any other questions for now? Yes, one more. Look.
What's your best practice approach for optimising DSAs, besides just taking the converting search terms and adding them in? Because I know we use smart bidding sometimes, but what's your best practice approach? It's mainly the data before you.
So,
Happy to pick that one up. DSA is one of my favorite products in the AdWords interface. There are lots of strategies, and I think one of the latest ones is using the DSA feed. So you can actually submit a lot of your URLs or parts of the website that you want to be targeting with DSA via feed, which speeds up the whole process, because typically a URL that is new to your website will take maybe 2 weeks to get indexed. So you can speed that up and create a lot of labels, segments of categories of products that you want to be bidding on. So I would say if you haven't tried the DSA feed, that's another lever that you can definitely test against the standard DSA campaigns. You might see that that's unlocking additional volume or kind of picking up URLs that typically would have taken longer to appear in these big.
Thank you for that. In terms of optimising to ROI, what's your best
Well,
approach?
You said it's smart bidding. That's the easiest way to get to the right ROAS, and you can set it at group level, so making sure you really group your products based on how they perform. I think that's where typically you get better results. So yeah, if you have like catch-all, let's say your kind of homepage or a generic page, but then the more specific categories should have a higher bid because you want, that's kind of more specific intent that you want to be converting. So yeah, I would say definitely try that.
Just for thing. So we've had DSA for some time now, around 12 to 15 months, sort of globally announced. Ultimately, we also have DSA feeds, which is currently in beta, so that's available for our subset of our DSA advertisers. I guess one point to make is that I am aware that often Google does talk about DSA as a fourth match type. I'm not sure whether this is a strategy that you guys would adhere to and agree with. However, I think I'd say with Bing, we'd always recommend that DSA is used in conjunction with a very sort of well-controlled broad match modifier strategy as well. So both products can work together, and absolutely to the lady's point, auto search functionality, so for example enhanced CPC, auto bidding strategies can indeed sit on top of those products too.
The only thing I'd just like to echo a point about making sure that you split it out, really, to be honest, splitting out by ad groups. That's definitely one of the most crucial things you can do. If you're not doing that and it is all just in a catch-all, the best you can do is make sure you use exclusions as well, so then you don't want to be targeting, and make sure that you integrate it well with the rest of your campaign. So it should be used as something to help research and find extra terms for existing campaigns. So that should always kind of remain at the heart of it as well. It's one of those that, like, we were always told, it shouldn't capture anything that's an existing keyword there, but I've seen it happen before. So just add in the negatives all the time for anything that's an exact match that doesn't fall into low search value. Just add it in just to be safe. And then the other thing is make sure you integrate with audience bid modifiers as well. It tends to work quite well with DSA. But for everyone, kind of like DSA is something that it's been around for a while with Google, but it's something that didn't work so well to begin with. To be honest, like years and years ago. So even if it's something that you've tried historically, maybe 4 years ago, give it another go, because it really does turn up good results these days.
Thank you very much. And is there any other question in the crowd before we go on?
Different
Yes,
subject really. So
yes, please.
Is there any metrics on the conversions of high ticket sales from mobile to desktop comparatively? So I guess my question is, do people actually buy high ticket items via mobiles, and are there any metrics on that stuff, generally speaking?
I mean, yeah, people will kind of switch devices. So I think enabling cross-device tracking and looking at those conversion events, we have it already. It's kind of in your settings. You can enable looking at cross-device conversions, so that can help, because ultimately, yeah, if people are not feeling safe to convert a high-value transaction on a mobile device, they might later on come on desktop to complete that.
Yeah, my general question is, do people actually tend to buy? Are people buying high ticket for mobile in vast quantities, or because I'm relatively new to as a new business? So.
I guess it will vary market by market, but
Okay.
in the UK and kind of more established like US, people are already very accustomed to buying through mobile. So in the travel industry, we have like really high value items like package deals and deals with flights. So I think people are starting to convert, but it will be hard to put a number on it if you're looking for that.
Okay.
The main point is that it's increasing, so I wouldn't say it's a high number of people that do it, but the amount of people that purchased on mobile full stop, 5 years ago was very small. It's what Sabrina was mentioning in her talk earlier, but that's changed over time. So it's the same kind of thing, just like high ticket items just kind of fall a bit behind the curve, but ultimately following the same curve. Just as well as across device attribution, which is definitely the key point to consider there. The other point is it's kind of linked into cross-device attribution, but you can get a tab up in AdWords that shows you the assist value between each device. So you can see how much mobile's assisting as opposed to other devices. So you can see, from another angle, basically the same view, but it's good to see as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, just to say to your point, folks will, if they trust the mobile experience, they will buy from it. I'd say, quite frankly.
All right, so then moving on to the next question that we have, do we have a lot of retailers in the room? Yeah. Okay, so this one is relevant with Q4 coming up and shopping season. You have Black Friday and Christmas coming. So again, open to the floor. What would you say is the most important thing to consider when it comes to optimizing your shopping campaigns?
Probably pass on to the other panel speakers because we don't run shopping campaigns in travel, but if we have time, I can speak about travel campaigns that are powered by inventory, so Google Hotel ads and so on.
Yeah, so a risk of sounding like a broken record is something about splitting out again, really. That is the absolute key driver. I mean, it's the same thing if you've not split out, when I say split out, I mean split out to one ad group one product per ad group. By doing this, you're then able to make sure that you're bidding correctly, because each product's going to have a different value that you want to assign to it. But ultimately, this is where you control it with search terms, also with negatives and search terms. So even though obviously shopping is all to do with products rather than keywords, you can still have negative keywords in there. And this helps to make sure that you can actually siphon the traffic in the correct ways. So many times you'll hear kind of people saying, I'm showing for XYZ product when I put in this search term, but these aren't the products that I want to show against these. So you can add in negative keywords to siphon the traffic through, so that it's only the ones that you want to actually appear against each search term. You can take it to the nth degree as well, where you basically exclude almost every search term, exclude them as negatives against a particular product, so that only certain search terms that can trigger those individual products. And then if you increase a bid on those quite a bit, then it may just be some trophy kind of like search terms that you want to get full coverage of certain terms. It's a way to go about it. On top of that as well, feed optimization, definitely something to not overlook really. Making sure you improve the product titles, descriptions, product categories, etc. Massively increase click-through rates.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I have a small question. When you are talking about optimization by PPC for products, for example, you see a keyword is working good in your store and you are selling good products under this keyword. So you increase your bid and this keywords, or you choose that. How you prefer?
But so it will be,
which strategy are you using?
Yeah, we'll be setting terms which will just perform well. and they're the ones that will work well in search. So what you can do is just, as I say, native everything out except for those particular that particular search term, and then if that is one that's going to work well, then increase a bid on it. So,
so why you increase? For example, let's talk about the industrial. When you increase, the other guy is increasing more, and the price is going higher, higher, higher. So why everyone on the marketing strategy tell me to increase this? So we got, for example, prices we are selling on Amazon. We got prices for some bits for 4 or 6 euros. So it's crazy. That's why I'm asking this.
No, of course. So there's two kind of sides to it. Obviously, everything else you can do in terms of like splitting out, etc. That's all just going to help you generally, so the prices don't need to be so high. But if there's some times where you know you're going to get a massive amount of volume, and it makes sense to pay for it, because this is only cases where it's it makes sense to pay that bit extra. Then that's where if you increase up, then you can get a bigger volume. Don't get me wrong. There's times when you need to consider the incremental, basically. So the incremental change in spend versus the incremental change in volume that you're going to get. Test the different amounts on each of those different ones. It's the same, we're talking about shopping here. This could apply to anything in terms of bidding, really, to be honest. Test in different positions, find out which one gets you the best kind of value, and it'll be based on everyone's, also on your own margins. Everyone will have different points where they're willing to go up to. And the only way to do it is by testing different data points.
Okay. With what you were saying as well, we always find, and you were quoting things like €6 for a bid, that's not uncommon. Sometimes you can pay, if it's worth it, you pay £20 for that bid if it's going to get you the return on ad spend. So it's all about just finding that sweet spot that you're happy with.
Yeah, for certain kind of keywords, like the 30 bid that you want, but that'll be based on margin, etc. Others like solicitors, I've seen bids as high as like £80-90 before, but that makes sense for them. Yeah.
There are some areas they can go to £20-40 just because it's worth. The one thing I was going to say that's quite interesting is we sometimes find that actually being in position 2 or 3 gets us more qualified traffic, where often the people who just click on the first ad that comes up are almost clicking blindly, and we get much higher bounce rates and poorer kind of form fill rates when we're up there. And actually people who come in when we're further down are better qualified, and therefore it actually works out better value for us.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it works the same for a lot of industries. There's somewhere, a lot of industries we do find like position 2 and 3 and 4 can work quite well. Like when I first got into the industry, position 3 was like very coveted, to be fair. Because position 1 just used to be too expensive, position 4 used to be off on the side and no one ever clicked. But position 3 tend to be the sweet spot, but it varies by industry. Some cases it is best to be like position 1 thing. What's related to conversion rate really, and how much people are likely to drop off. Sometimes there is like a big drop off in conversion rate between position 1 and 2, but other times, as you say, it can be people who've blindly clicked and then gone somewhere else afterwards once you've thought about it a bit more. It works differently for different industries.
I think from a travel perspective, very similarly, optimizing your feed and thinking about new things that you can potentially add. So I would say we are in the flash business of sales, so they're ending soon. So anything that can add urgency or promotional messaging, think about any call-outs or promotion that you can add to enhance your product listing. So that would be another tip around Black Friday and any upcoming kind of seasonal campaigns.
Any other questions in the crowd? Okay, yes, please.
For more of these flash sale, kind of like one-day events, what would you recommend is the best way of doing an ad? Instead of like, just because if you create a brand new ad just for that one day, obviously it's not going to take enough time to get live. And some of the extensions now are taking a lot more time to be approved by Google. Not really sure about Bing yet. So it's kind of like, if you only have the sale for one day, what's the best way to make sure that your ad is pushing that sale?
Yeah, I think preparing in advance, scheduling it, so making sure that that will actually go live when you need it. Adding the extension early on and not triggering it on any impressions, that's also another trick. So you get it approved a couple of days before the actual event happens, because I agree that sometimes exactly when you need it, things might not work and you need more time to get it approved and all of that. But yeah, if you know in advance, work closely with your sales and trading teams. That's what we do at Secret Escapes to make sure we're not missing those opportunities, because we run often 24-hour sales.
So which extensions would you be using for that?
Promotion extension is quite good because it features either the discount or sends the user straight to that landing page. So I think that works quite well on different device types. Hope that helps.
Anything to add?
Not as such. Only thing I'd potentially suggest when it comes to making sure that it's approved in time is often if you, sometimes we've just got like sales with dynamically inserted values into them, and basically the values are pulled from the business data section, so that if the business data section is updated rather than sale ads themselves, it tends to take a bit less time to get approved. So we just have one kind of, well, but when flash sales are quite likely, for any clients like that, we would just have sale ads in there and we can be switched on or off at any time. But it's dynamically pulled headlines and description lines from the business data, so if you update those, it's quicker.
Okay, so if we take away from the very technical and do a couple of questions for the futurists in the room, we'll go back to PPC after these. And again, open to the floor. How long do you think it will take for digital assistants and smart speakers to launch advertising platforms, and is there anything we can do to prepare?
Okay, wow. So, look, for me, I'd say for the next, between about 2 to 5 years, right? The reason I say that is, look, not so long ago, digital assistants or those kind of contained within smart speakers were ultimately novelties, right? And they didn't really have that much functionality. Perhaps they could understand straightforward questions, but at best, right? But I guess that's changed in recent years, you know, as the data came pouring in. So, you know, if you think about mobile phone companies, they stored hundreds of millions of conversations across the globe, and ultimately that data fueled AI algorithms to help machines better understand human speech. And so now, obviously Bing and Google have reached a stage where you know, speech recognition, natural language processing has very much reached human equivalence. So arguably, I'd say that the next decade, and again, we're not far off that, we're going to see, you know, these smart speakers, digital assistants, being able to answer questions, or be able to sort of get clarification on queries from consumers. And I think then the next generation of always-on assistants will be one which they really understand the wider context, because ultimately they are connected to a wider kind of digital world, beacons, you know, connected devices, as well as the individual's personal ecosystem. And at that point, we'll be looking at ways in which to kind of monetize those experiences. But I guess, you know, we do talk a lot about voice search and preparing for voice search, you know, whilst I'd say, you know, volumes as such, and I'd arguably probably cross both engines comparatively, you know, the growth is significant. And it's always good to prepare already. So I'd say, you know, thinking about, you know, sort of really different strategies for both text and voice. When we look at kind of data on what voice queries are constituted from or of, you know, they are very much longer, more conversational. Very much kind of based on interrogatives, sort of basic commands, that sort of thing. It's just the way in which, you know, folks actually interact with their personal assistants, largely, you know, on their phone or their smart speakers in a more conversational manner. So questions to ask yourself, you know, what are the questions to which my product or my service is the answer to? You know, does my keyword portfolio have coverage for longer tail queries that cover commands? Same thing for interrogatives. You know, does my keyword coverage contain, you know, basic common descriptors such as best, top, price, that sort of thing, and kind of be ready, right? Because we always want to be prepared. But again, you know, coming back to the question, I think in terms of monetizing these experiences, a good few years. It is good to kind of, you know, watch out for things like what Spotify are doing with short voice ads, which is interesting. And I believe that Amazon are kind of experimenting with something as well. So stay tuned to what Microsoft's got in store.
Any questions around that? One follow-up question that I would have is, how will the continued use of machine learning evolve paid search strategy?
I have to take that one. So we use already a lot of machine learning, perhaps without realizing all the smart bidding. It's powered by Google's engine and a lot of data points that we can tap into just by setting up things very easily in the UI. So I think a lot of these mundane tasks, like setting up keyword lists or doing even the research part, will be replaced by similar DSA campaigns, just picking up everything from the content of your website, realizing what's relevant, what's not, similar to the algorithm that we're seeing for organic listings. So I think, yeah, from reporting point of view, Google Analytics and other tools that are available to us as advertisers, starting to have like very smart suggestions, observations, alerts, all these type of things that can save us time, make sure that we're not missing out on any kind of important KPI indicators. So I think where the strategy for digital marketing is going to shift from machine learning taking on board a lot of the reporting and, as I said, researching parts of kind of the processes, it'll be more creative. So it's more around ad copies that are relevant, tailored, really personalized. And I have seen it with my team over the last 2 years. We're really spending more time on thinking about the content, the copy, the landing page experience, the visuals, because we have that time and bandwidth now, because we don't need to spend hours and hours in Excel spreadsheets to actually analyze the data that we get. So I think I see a lot of benefits, and I don't think we need to worry about our jobs that will be all replaced by machines. It's simply that machines will enable us to do more things and greater things for our businesses.
Thank you, Rumyana. Anything to add?
So I was just going to echo that really, in that creativity has been the main kind of way forward in that. You know, we're going to have to upskill in that kind of case. If everyone's being very data heavy, then that's good for a transitional period, because I wouldn't say we're at that point yet where we can give almost everything to machines, or where you'd be prepared to do that. And you definitely never would with the creativity side. That's where the human touch is needed. But in this kind of transition period, this is where we need to look at where machine learning can help, but where as well we've got to treat it skeptically, and see where we can overlay our own tools to make sure we can still add value in this period. But ultimately, creativity will kind of become much more even than it is now, in the sense of a high skill needed for PPC advertisers.
I think you make a great point there, because I think this is such an exciting time, because the art and science are truly more integrated than ever, right, for our industry. You also mentioned a great point. Effectively, machine learning trains AI, and already marketers can gain from using AI in tools and platforms. With benefits of automation, you mentioned DSA is a good example of that, and also this ability to sort of reason with data over time, and that data is your customer data. So ultimately, the hope is that with machine learning will become, advertising will continue to become more and more targeted and relevant for the customer, which is ultimately what advertising should be. I think programmatic advertising will become more and more smarter, things like scripts, much smarter and smarter all the time. And indeed, you make a really good point as well. We need to think about kind of how AI machine learning can augment what we already do as marketers, and free us up to be kind of more creative, because you cannot expect a machine to sort of mimic the human brain in that sense.
Thank you for that. So we're at a close. We have time for one more question from the crowd. If anyone has a question for the panelists. Yes, please.
What would you say the most effective way is to do paid search in other countries? If you're really established within the UK, and say you've got to launch into countries next year.
I can help you with that during a break. Yeah, that was my job. But go ahead, Dave. You're good too.
In general, or like?
So we were running
in general.
We're running 16 different markets, so like diversifying and using the local language, making sure that it's native and all kind of approved. I know it's hard at times to get the native speakers or kind of local insights to make sure that those ads will be relevant. I think a good starting points are, again, tools like Google Translate to just get the bulk of the work ready, and then you get it kind of screened and approved by maybe editors. Maybe you hire a translating agency. You don't need to really kind of have it as a full-time in-house resource. It's just going to be like a push. Using DSA, if your website is already kind of tailored, translated into the foreign language, then that will be easy for Google to pick up again what are the relevant queries. So it's a good starting point to at least research what will kind of work in that territory before you kind of expand and do more keyword research.
So would you say DSA is the best method if you, literally in its first month for your structure?
If it's well SEO optimized, yes.
Yeah.
Because you need to get the ranking and kind of at least a bit of authority and time for the engines to kind of recognize your website. But if you're certain that the content on the website is already tailored, translated, and as best as it can be, I would say DSA will be a good starting point, and then scaling up from what you research about. And Google definitely has resources to support on internationalizing, so we've sent some campaigns across to be translated, and that can be also help.
Yeah, just to add a couple of other points, as well as DSA being a good research tool for one of the things we used to use a lot, it only kind of applies to e-commerce clients, but launching a shopping campaign early and using the search terms that come from that to inform exactly what you should have as targeted keywords there. Because ultimately you can find out keyword planning, etc. Don't get me wrong, definitely use those, what you could expect, but still DSA and shopping.team, what people are actually definitely putting for your particular business. Only other thing is just have a look on the search results pages in those countries for what other competitions use in terms of call to actions, just how it gives you an idea of what vaguely would appeal to customers in that market. Again, you need to look at lots of different ways. That might just be one that hasn't really been.
I think the last point I would make is absolutely everything these guys have said, but do your market research as well, right? Because, and again, kind of, think about branding too, because, I think it's very, very important, particularly understand the idiosyncrasies of, folks in a given country, get as much kind of data and research to help you do that and make sure that kind of you land your products, as well as possible, right? Because I often see that, if kind of you aren't doing any sort of branding activity, you really, haven't researched the market that you're entering into, often your launch isn't as sound as you want it to be.
All right, well then, we're at a close right now. Thank you to our panelists for some excellent answers, and thank you to the crowd for very